am quite behind in my book reviews. So please, I hope that you enjoy this long video. I'm hoping it will entertain you. And I'm hoping that you will find something from this list that interests you. When Hope Springs New. This is the 4th book in the Canadian West series. This was really well written. I enjoyed it, but I did feel like I was rereading book 2. It was just an odd sense where Elizabeth is in a new location now, and it's like almost the same as what she had just left, but the difference is that going into the First Nations Native American area, no one is talking to her. She knows the language now, but when she tries to communicate, everyone is avoiding her completely, and she's like, what am I doing wrong? And why do they hate me? And she's really trying because she had just had friendships from the other place where she had come from, and now she's trying to find that again because she's so lonely. She's the only white woman there, and she wants to make friends with some of the people that live in the village. I will say she is very content in this book compared to some of the others. I really liked that she's like going with the flow, understanding what's going on now that she's been established in her marriage. The story did change to another setting near the end of this book, but not near the end, like probably 3/4 in. And so I was kind of like, oh, now we got to kind of do this all over again. It was interesting. But I will say that the first bit of this book was really well done. I had fun learning about the situations there. But I do think that this story just kind of ended. It was like, what's going on here? Like, what just happened? And there's like nothing really moving. It's just kind of like, and this happened. And I'm like, okay, so what else? And I guess I have to find out next book. There are always hard things in these stories. There's infant death in this, so I need to let you guys know that there is loss of children. There are animals that die. There is a disaster that takes place, and that's why a lot of these things happen. And there are also people that have multiple wives. It's part of the native culture, and so that's addressed. The Bitter and Birding Society. When I started this, I feel like it took me a little bit to get into it, and there was no reason for that because it was always very interesting. I really thought that the plot was well done. Part of this book is in the modern time, and part of this is back in the 50s. So if we go back in time, the story is about Cora and her family. Cora is in the future as well. Her family, she has a sister, Viola. Well, I think Viola would be how you would say it, not like viola the instrument. And their father is a moonshiner. There's a new family in town. The pastor and his family are here, and they don't understand what it's like to be in that type of area. And you know what? They don't like outsiders coming in and telling them how they should live their lives. There's something that happens right in the beginning of this book, and I was kind of like trying to understand what took place because we start in the late 50s, I think is the first chapter, and then it backtracks a couple of years for that story, but we go into the modern time too, so I got confused for a second. So there is an obvious crime that took place that we find out, but we don't really understand it when it's told. Eventually things go along where we try to find this out. But in the modern time period, we have Anna who goes to visit her great aunt. Her great aunt's name is Cora. She is going to help her out, try to get rid of some of her stuff even. And she has like a bookmobile, but her great aunt goes off when she gets there and she's like, okay. And so she's left with like the neighbor named Sam who just like kind of drives by slowly and she's like, is he stalking me? But when she's there, she starts to meet some of the people and they have this thing called the Bitter and Birding Society where they look for different birds and they see the creatures in the woods. It takes a while to get to there, honestly. But once it gets there, it's really interesting because they talk a lot about the different things that they see. There's a dog that she finds in this, which I haven't heard of any dogs in a story in a while, so that was nice. There are funny parts in this, cute parts, sad parts. A lot of this story is a mixed bag when you go back and forth. I really enjoyed learning about the characters and seeing how their personalities were. I struggled at first with Anna in the modern time period, but it was a really well told story and I really enjoyed the ending too. This, by the way, is about grace and how deep it can hit you and how God's love really can overpower you and be there for you when sometimes you just hold these grudges or you have these bitter feelings. Oh, it turned out to be really beautiful. I really liked it. So for content, there is moonshine that's talked about, and there is someone that is drunk at one point. There is cigarette smoking. There are grudges. There's murder. There's grief, death, injuries. There is a character that has many miscarriages. There's shooting. So there's some violence. There is someone that like trips and they said that he said a bad word, but they don't say what the bad word was. And he apologizes for saying it, even though we don't know what he said. So that's the content in this. I hope that you get a chance to read this if this is your type of story. Cards on the table. Of course, I had to read an Agatha Christie story. My Hercule Poirot reading is still going pretty strongly. This one I had not heard about before, and I was trying to understand what was going on. And you know, there's a card game. It's a bridge game. There are lots of characters. I struggle with lots of characters. There's a party at Mr. Shaitana, I think. He's an art collector. He has a lot of things he wants to show off. He even wants to show Hercule Poirot his collection. And he has this party filled with people. Kind of reminded me of And Then There Were None, but different too. But there's just like parts of it just reminded me of it. There is a person that gets stabbed at the party. And so now Poirot, he wants to find out what's going on, and he tries to find out every person's motive, what they might have against this person that was murdered. And when you investigate each person, you get to know them a lot better. I really liked how this took place. This was like what I loved about this book, because every time I'd be like, ooh, that's a good idea. Oh, that's a good point. Maybe they're the murderer. So this one, I did not pick the murderer correctly. So there were some loops, and I was like, wow, that surprised me. For content, there are people that drink, people that smoke, and I think there was one D word. There might have been something more in there that I missed, and there is murder. Definitely one of my favorite from the Poirot books. I'm getting closer and closer to getting through all of the Poirot books. That brings me to the Barbizon. This book, I had been wanting to read this for like 3 years. I really was anticipating it. It was a history that I had heard about in passing. Plus, when I was a teenager, there was like this modeling scout in New Jersey that was the Barbizon school that I wanted to get into, and then I like said, never mind. But that made me learn about the Barbizon, the hotel that existed for a long, long time that I had heard of back then. So finally I was like, okay, I need to learn what this even is. And it made sense that that modeling school took the name from the Barbizon. But the problem is that the author of this said that they didn't really gather a lot of understanding of the history of the Barbizon Hotel. And a lot of people had tried to write books on this, but they just struggled to get proper information. So I would have liked to have more history on the building, the people behind the building, the staff workers. That would have been really great to get a lot of that. But instead, this is mainly about some of the famous people that stayed at the Barbizon. So that kind of was like, all right, well, we get a little bit of insight. A lot of this book talks about the unsinkable Molly Brown, which was a movie with Debbie Reynolds that I really like. It's musical. Anyway, the whole idea is that the unsinkable Molly Brown, she was an actual famous person that existed. She was on the Titanic and survived. And so that's why she was called that. So she stayed at the Barbizon. She lived there until her death after her separation with her husband. So we get a lot of history about her. We got some history of Grace Kelly, who stayed there, some history of Sylvia Plath, and apparently a lot of the bell jar is mentioned. And I had never read the bell jar, and now I'm kind of interested, kind of not, but she talks a lot about it in this book because it's kind of about her experience there, Sylvia Plath's experience. Some things that I didn't enjoy. I'm a stay-at-home wife. I got married when I was young, and a lot of this book talks about how the women that stayed at the Barbizon, because this was a hotel just for women, by the way, and it talks about how it kind of saved these women from having like maybe bad marriages or something like that, making it seem like because marriage was pretty much the only way for women, and that a lot of these women were business women, famous women, single women, it made it seem like it was a horrible idea if you decided to get married. Yes, there were some women that kind of felt forced to get married, but some of them actually wanted to, that were mentioned, and a lot of them did. There were a lot of college kids, but just like the way the writing was, it would like made it seem like marriage was negative like the entire time, as if like it's a horrible thing to get married, especially when you're young. And I'm like, it's not that way for everyone. I can speak from myself, but like I can understand how it's bad for a lot of people, but it's also good for a lot of people. It's like, also, there's stuff about the Kinsey report, which is a report that I had studied long ago. It's a horrible report because Kinsey was just a masochist and he abused children for that report. But a lot of people didn't understand a lot of the report, not understanding his motives and his ways of doing these reports. So this talks very highly about the report. And I'm thinking like, you obviously haven't read it or you don't know exactly the way things happen. There's a lot of content in this, but like not detailed, graphic. It just talks about how there, were prostitutes in that area. Some of the people that lived there were prostitutes, but they never brought men in. They weren't allowed to. I don't remember any language in this. There might have been one or two, and I'm just not thinking about it. There's stuff about sexuality, like talking about like the reports, having sex out of wedlock, even that there was a whole floor in the building where they were known to all be lesbians. There is a lot of stuff about suicide brought up because there were women that killed themselves there. People being put through psychiatric help. There's murder talked about like briefly. There was just a lot of stuff in this, so it's like hard to remember. It's a very informational book. I thought it was okay. It could have been researched better, and like I said, less famous people. Let's just research on let's just talk about this person for a long time. Oh yeah, they stayed here. Oh yeah, Rita Hayworth. Okay, yeah, let's talk about the fact that she had photos at the swimming pool, and it's like, I'm sure there are a lot of photos that were taking place there. And going into I Am Not Your Enemy, this might be a little bit heavy duty for a lot of people. This is a Christian book, but it has some stuff about their political understandings of things, or it gives a little sway, just so you know, rather than being more neutral. And there's really like no scriptures in here. There is at the beginning and near the end the same passage that they talk about, like kind of to wrap it all together. And that was like it. It was like one. I think it could have had a lot more. It was well done. Look, this was written right after the COVID lockdown. This is about the conflicts in Palestine with the Israeli state and the Palestinians, and finding peace between them, as well as stuff that happened with the IRA in Ireland and Northern Ireland. It also brings up the apartheid in South Africa. With these three places, more than half of this book is about Palestine, and it gives you examples from both sides. So you get people that were killed or had like a family member killed on each side. They tell their story. They talk about how these people that are like interviewed, how now they want peace and they want to have an understanding with the other people so they could see that they're human, to see the human side rather than just seeing them as like, you're the enemy and I want you out of here, or just having revenge or whatever it might be. It's showing the human side of life and how when you get to know someone, despite what they've done or what they've felt, you can find that healing or at least that understanding. Even in the story in Ireland, you get both sides. It's just like really impactful. And for the apartheid area, they also have stories from both sides, and they explain a little bit of each situation in case you don't really fully know. It is a short book. I read it pretty quickly. I thought it was enjoyable, wasn't outstanding, but it was a pretty average book. This does talk about how Christ can bring healing to people as well. For content, there's a lot of talk about violence, grief, death, injuries that are described. There's not swearing, but there was, I think, 2 parts where he was like quoting someone, but then like slashed, like just put the first letter and then a slash strike through kind of thing, but not of the actual word. So you could understand like, oh, someone's swearing here. All 3 of these stories, I had already had some knowledge about it. I've known people that have gone to these places, worked with peacekeeping in these places. And I've read other books by people that had been in these places to find peacekeeping situations. So like I had an understanding when I was going into it, what I was going to be reading. So for me, this was kind of like a review, and it was really nice to get that encouraging bit of like how we have the power to forgive as people that live in Christ, and how Jesus was able to forgive his enemies and love them, and how we're supposed to love people as ourselves, including our enemy. So it was pretty impactful. I just wish there was a lot more using the scriptures to explain the importance a little bit more. A real quick review, Milly-Molly-Mandy. I have read several of the books that I've reviewed over the past year, and I decided to read the spring one, but there were 3 repeat stories that I got that were in other stories. And I was like, this is the first time I've had repeat stories. So I was a little annoyed with that, because then that leaves me like 2 or 3 stories that were ones I hadn't read before. It's a very short book. It was only like 36 pages on my Nook, but it's still cute. I liked the stories. I love Milly-Molly-Mandy and her friends, and how they learn, how they're motivated, how they have business savvy when they're really little, how they just are having fun, exploring, learning, growing. For content, there is one story where they talk talk about a boy and girl get really, really dirty in the mud, and then they need to get their clothes stripped, and then they're put into separate tin baths, but they like can see each other. But there's nothing. It's very, very innocent. Not my favorite of the Milly-Molly-Mandy books. When the Waters Came. This is a story about a flood that came and devastated Johnstown, Pennsylvania in 1899. It killed over 2,000 people. It was really, really devastating. And the story, it's a fictional story about the event based off of so many great clippings. And the author definitely did research talking to the town and trying to get that information. But this is a really nice story with a lot of heavy things. It's about a woman who's a nurse named Anna May, and she works for the Red Cross, which was like new at the time. She's going through the town because she worked at a hospital nearby. So she had volunteered herself to help out. Now there's also a pastor, his story, named Montgomery. They call him Monty throughout this. So he knows a lot of the people that live there, being the pastor there. He has his own story, like a background story that's very interesting. But now he's a pastor. He tries to go through the town trying to find people that have survived. He has survived. Throughout each chapter at the beginning, they actually have quotes from people that lived through this horrible event. And that was like, whoa, whenever they just opened it, it was like, wow, that gave me such like an understanding of the horribleness of this. But he's going through trying to see who he could find, help different people. He starts to see this nurse often, and the two of them are starting to form a friendship. She has her own story and her own background that we learn about, which was really interesting too. So the two of them, they join forces to help the people, and they start to form a bond, and they're like, whoa, through this horrible event, we have found someone that we could connect with. This has a really good theme of God's love and not taking vengeance too, not wanting to wrong others, to find peace, because this has to do with their backstories too. And then to deal with the event and to be like, how do we handle moving forward through this tragic thing that really occurred that we had no control over, but maybe there was a certain situation that could have prevented it. So that's why it leads to, is there vengeance that should be held? For content, because of the situation, there are injuries talked about. There are deaths, many deaths. There are children that obviously had gone through this. We don't really hear a lot about it. It's just, you know, their bodies in the water. This has a lot of loss and feeling alone through that. There's even mention of a sickness and illness that happens because of it. There's also talk about murder and just dealing with grief. This is very clean. There is like a guy starts to think about kissing a woman. Otherwise, like there's like nothing in here to worry about. And there are people that are drunk and drinking to kind of deal with their problems when they lose everything. Oh, and someone gets hurt pretty badly. But I really liked this story. This was really good, and I can't wait to read more of the books from this series. All right, so we have book 2 from the Amish Marketplace series. I read the first book a few months ago, and I really enjoyed it. But this one was so great. This one was totally better than the first one, but I highly recommend reading the first one because you get an understanding of all the main characters of the books in that first book, because they come up in every book. They're all like minor characters and they have conversations. So I really think that if you want to read The Farm Stand, you have to start with The Bake Shop. For this one, wow, I felt the emotions of the people while reading this, and I really could understand their feelings and like what they were going through. This one was heavy for my heart, but like in a good way. So Selena has her own farm stand. She loves to go into her own garden. She has a lot, and so she always goes to her farm stand on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays to sell her goods. And there is this guy that comes around named Will, and he has his own restaurant that he runs with his brother. He is the chef. And so he wants some local vegetables and fruits that she sells, and he wants to be able to incorporate them in his recipes and in his salads. So he starts like buying her out, and then he says like, hey, let's do a business proposition of where you start to help my business and I'll help your business, while she also runs her stall. Now she is Amish, Old Order Amish, and he's Old Order Mennonite. So Old Order Mennonite is different. I'm New Order Mennonite. Old Order Mennonite and Old Order Amish, they have their similarities. That becomes an issue in here, like barely talked about though, but it does come up near parts of this book. But here's the thing that a lot of people are going to struggle with when they read this. Both of these people have been in long-term relationships, but they kind of have these families that are just close, that they kind of said, hey, maybe these two people should be a couple, while there's like not really any depth of feeling. And so she doesn't really want to get married, but she gets all this pressure from her family. And while Will, on his side, he's been in this relationship and he gets pressured too, but like both of them don't want that for their own situations, but they're starting to be drawn to one another. And so they're like, whoa, I'm in a relationship, I can't go there. So this whole thing, they start to fight their feelings while not wanting to hurt anyone, but they also like have these emotions that they are like, what do I do about this? And then there are people around them that are close to them saying, hey, I think you're into this person. You really shouldn't do that, or you should do something about your own relationship if that's the case. And they're like, oh, but it's not like that. And so that is like what this story is about, just so you know, a lot of that. But I found it to be fascinating, and there's no cheating, but there's obviously that emotional pull, but it's not cheating. It's hard, guys, to explain this, but like I could feel their hearts, and you see that they want to do what's right in God's eyes too, and they're doing their best to live their lives for God. So I really enjoyed this story. Really good. And with that, I just finished this book. This is The Coffee Corner. So this is the third book in this series. This one I didn't love as much, but it is also very good. I probably like this the least out of the three, but oh man, I shed tears at the end of this book though. So it did move me still. So still good. This is about Bethany. Her stall is the coffee corner. She likes to make flavored coffees. And there is a guy that is in her community who comes by with his Dottie, which is his grandfather, and they come for the coffee, and she really has a little bit of a crush on him. His name is Micah, but she like has this a little bit of a low self-image. Now she is very talkative. She gets along with so many people. She's bubbly and she's amazing, but she kind of bases her opinion of herself through the eyes of other people in a negative way. And you've got people that like yell at her at times saying like, whoa. And I'm like going like, yeah, you tell her, but she's really sweet. So it's like hard to read at times because of her low self-image. And I'm just like, what's wrong with you, girl? You're fine. Step it up. Don't worry so much. But yeah, so she worries a lot about what others think about her, I guess you could say, especially Micah. It's so nice to say the name Micah since that's one of my son's names. But there is a story of grief in this, and there is a story of dealing with different situations. Like Micah's backstory is really good. Bethany, you know, she has a really good family. She doesn't really have any problems other than her low self-image. And so the two of them start to feel really connected to one another, and they both have like similar things, like they don't really know what the other is thinking about them, and they think, okay, well, we have a good friendship. So they're focusing on that. And Bethany, she really wants to help Micah with certain things that he goes through in this book. It is really good. So for content, there is drinking and drunkenness that is mentioned in this. And there's also gossip that is addressed, which was like really good. And the next book, which is the last book from the series, I have on hold at the library. I was hoping that I would have been able to read that by now, but unfortunately that will have to be the next time. And I want to read it. You know, I read quickly. What can I say? And the last book to talk about is Farm Girl, a Wisconsin memoir. What I love about this, okay, I know we got some Little House on the Prairie fans out there. I'm a really big fan, actually. I've read lots of different things about the lives of the Ingalls and the Wilders and a whole bunch of other things, plus all the books I've read, plus I grew up on the TV series. And what is really cool is that this book doesn't mention them at all, just so you know. But it's set in Wisconsin, in the same exact town that we had the story of the Little House books. This is in Plum Creek and like Pepin, that whole area. So if you know, you know. So this is like set in the Depression. And this is a real story about a girl and what she was like growing up. Now she's in her 90s when she wrote this book, and she wrote this just a few years ago. Literally, she is like almost 100 if she's still kicking it, which she might be. Maybe she's over 100 now. So anyway, this is set in the Depression time. She talks about her upbringing, her family life. She talks about the different farm things that they do together, her experiences, her time going to school, the things about like listening to Victrolas together as a family, and the radio, and just the different technology, the phone when it came around in their neighborhood, her parents and how they have such a really good relationship and they loved each other so much, her siblings. And it's mainly about her experiences growing up in the Depression, and how she said at one point that she didn't consider themselves poor because they always had something to eat. They always made do with what they could. But if you look back at them, they were definitely poor, but she didn't feel that way because their family unit was just so good and their community was really good. There were a couple pictures in this to show her family, so I thought that was nice to see what they looked like. Now, for content, there was one sad situation that she mentioned really early on, that she had a sibling that died when he was young. So that was really heartbreaking, but she didn't really dwell on it, which I wish she like gave a little bit more about how they handled that. But she made it seem like they always thought that there could have been a situation that would cause his death. So that was just like, oh, I can't imagine or fathom that. But like their unit of love helped them through it, which is amazing and something that's kind of rare. There is a blizzard in this, a dust bowl. There are a whole bunch of things that talk about the Depression time. There was a use of God's name in vain attached to the D word. She did say the small a word in here, where her parents like said, hey, you shouldn't say that. So she got yelled at for it. And that's it for the content in this, but it was fun. It was a pretty quick read, but I took my time on it. Like I really should have spent more time reading this. It was just like average pretty much throughout it. So I was just like taking my time, but it was really nice. I didn't have any problems at all. I loved the stories and learning from her. Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much for going through that. I tried to explain everything as briefly, but as informationally as I could without being too slow or boring. I hope that you learned something from this and that you got something from it, and maybe you found a new read. Thank you so much for being here. You guys are amazing. I gotta go pick up my son from school. It is a Friday and we're looking forward to a busy weekend, actually. Thank you guys. It is beautiful out, at least today. Finally, we got some nice weather again because it like keeps going back and forth. Please stay. Thank you again, guys. Have a wonderful week. And let me know if you want to read any of these or if you've read any of them, and tell me what you're reading now. Maybe I'll want to read it too. Bye.